First of all, I would like to apologize for not being completely honest. In the comments section of my last video, How Hitler Was Even More Evil Than You Thought, the little-known stories of his many Jewish friends, which you should totally check out, I stated that I would no longer use computerized narration in future videos after some negative reactions occurred. However, at least within the next 2.5 months, I will use computerized narration in all of my videos. There are a couple of reasons behind this. First of all, I don't like how my voice sounds, especially when it is captured by an electronic device. Second of all, I am on vacation in India right now and won't be back home in the United States until August 5th or so. Without a microphone, I think my recorded voice sounds especially bad, and I left my microphone at home in the US. Once I am back home in the US with my microphone, perhaps I might consider using my voice. Yes, I could buy another microphone here in India, but why waste $100 or so? It is my hope that you will understand and accept these reasons. Besides, this isn't just a cheap, extremely robotic, and incomprehensible computerized voice, is it? The voice you hear here is an AI voice generated through paid software, and I find it much more pleasant to listen to than my own. Anyways, let's talk about Herschel Grynszpan. A Jew whose assassination of a Nazi diplomat was used by the Nazis as an excuse for launching Kristallnacht, one of the first acts of mass violence against Jews in the history of the Third Reich and a prelude to the final solution and the murder of 6 million Jews during the Holocaust. In my opinion, this is one of the most fascinating and underrated Nazi-era life stories. Herschel Grynszpan was born on March 28, 1921, in Hanover, Germany. His parents, Polish Jews, emigrated in 1911, and despite being born in Germany, Grynszpan was never a German citizen. He was the youngest of 6 children, only 3 of whom survived childhood. Germans and many Western European Jews categorized the Grynszpan family as Ostjude, or Eastern Jew. As opposed to the more secular, affluent, educated, and assimilated German Jews, so-called Ostjude usually spoke Yiddish and were more religiously observant, impoverished, less educated, and less assimilated. Growing up as an Ostjude, Grynszpan faced both economic hardship and religious discrimination. His intense sense of Jewishness was fueled by the ostracization he experienced in school. A fiery temper coupled with a strong sense of identity often led him to respond to anti-Semitic insults with his fists. As anti-Semitism increased, Grynszpan's future in Germany became uncertain. He left school at 14 and his parents, seeing no future for him in Germany, arranged for his emigration to the British Mandate of Palestine. The plan changed, and he ended up in Paris living with his uncle and aunt. Life wasn't easy. He was an illegal immigrant, unable to work or study. His attempts to legalize his residency were unsuccessful. He lived in a small enclave of Yiddish-speaking Polish Orthodox Jews and spent his days aimlessly wandering Paris, spending time in coffee houses, going to the cinema, or reciting Yiddish poems to himself. His uncle, who was extremely poor himself, was his only source of support. Meanwhile, back in Germany, the Nazis were expelling Polish Jews en masse, with 12,000 Polish Jews being forcibly expelled from Germany and left stranded at the border of Poland. Trapped in the open on the German-Polish border, the refugees faced extremely poor conditions, according to a British woman who worked with the Red Cross.
I found thousands crowded together in pigsties. The old, the sick and children herded together in the most inhumane conditions. Some actually tried to escape back to Germany and were shot.
Among these refugees were Grynszpan's parents, forced to leave their home and business with little more than the clothes on their backs. Grynszpan received a desperate postcard from his sister, detailing their horrific situation and pleading for help. This was the last straw. Enraged by this as well as other severe persecutions by the Nazis against the Jewish population, Grynszpan decided to make an extraordinarily bold move that would forever alter the course of world history. In the evening of November 6, 1938, after a heated argument with his uncle, he walked out of his uncle's house with just 300 francs and spent the night at a cheap hotel. The following morning, November 7, 1938, he penned a farewell postcard to his parents and put it in his pocket, then went to a gun shop in the Rue du Faubourg Saint-Martin, where he bought a 6.35mm revolver and a box of 25 bullets for 235 francs, caught the metro to Solferino station and walked to the German embassy at 78 Rue de Lille. It is widely believed that Grynszpan wanted to assassinate Johannes von Welczek, the German ambassador to France, but fate had other plans. Upon entering the embassy, Grynszpan walked past von Welczek, who was leaving for his morning walk. When Grynszpan arrived at 9:45 a.m., he identified himself at the reception desk as a German resident and asked for an embassy official. He did not ask for anyone by name. He claimed that he was a spy with important intelligence, which he had to share with the most senior diplomat available, preferably the ambassador. Grynszpan, unaware that he had just passed von Welkseck, asked if he could see His Excellency, the ambassador, to hand over the most important document he claimed to possess. The clerk on duty asked Ernst von Rath, the junior of the two embassy officials available, to see him. Upon entering Rath's office, Grynszpan was asked to show him the most important document. Grynszpan pulled out his gun and shot him 5 times in the abdomen. According to the French police, he shouted before pulling out his gun,
"You're a filthy Boche. In the name of 12,000 persecuted Jews, here is the document."
Grynszpan made no attempt to resist or escape, and identified himself truthfully to the French police. He confessed to shooting Rath, and repeated that his motive was to avenge the persecuted Jews. Rath died 2 days later on November 9, at the age of 29. Within hours, using Rath's assassination as a pretext, the Nazis launched widespread violence against Jews throughout Germany known as Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. Lasting all night on November 9 and into the morning on November 10, Kristallnacht resulted in thousands and thousands of Jewish shops, homes, and offices being smashed or burned, over 200 synagogues being destroyed, Jewish homes, hospitals and schools being ransacked as attackers demolished buildings with sledgehammers, over 30,000 Jews being sent to concentration camps, and at least more than 90, possibly hundreds, of Jews being killed. All of this was carried out in a very public manner, attracting worldwide attention. Although Goebbels and company claimed that this was largely being carried out by the German public, in reality it was sanctioned by the Nazi government and largely carried out by SA and SS forces, although a non-negligible number of German civilians participated in it and most looked on without intervening. Historians view Kristallnacht as a prelude to the final solution and the murder of 6 million Jews during the Holocaust that began a few years later in 1941. For those curious, Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, is named after the shards of glass that littered the streets after Jewish-owned stores, buildings, and synagogues were smashed. It is extremely important to note that the Nazi government had been planning violence against Jews for some time, and Kristallnacht was eventually going to happen regardless of whether or not Grynszpan killed the diplomat. It was just a matter of finding an excuse to launch it, and Grynszpan gave them one. In the grim aftermath of his violent act against a German diplomat, Herschel Grynszpan found himself in the glare of international attention. With Rath's death and the horrors of Kristallnacht, Grynszpan was catapulted into a role of notorious significance. Unfazed by his newfound fame, he played to his role in his prison cell, writing letters to the world's celebrities and enjoying interviews. American journalist Dorothy Thompson passionately rallied to his defense in a broadcast heard by millions. Invoking the hypocrisies of Nazi Germany, she raised poignant questions about justice, responsibility, and the value of a single life amidst the tumultuous political landscape. Echoes of her sentiments were found in liberal and left-wing newspapers and commentators worldwide. Yet, not everyone was sympathetic towards Grynszpan's actions. Jewish organizations, horrified by Grynszpan's drastic measures, fiercely condemned them, though they still voiced outrage over the unjust reprisals against German Jews. As Grynszpan's trial approached, international appeals raised significant funds for his defense. American journalist Thompson urged non-Jews to contribute, eager to prevent the Nazi narrative of a Jewish conspiracy from gaining traction. In the end, 2 of Paris's leading advocates, including the eminent lawyer, Isidor Frankl, joined Grynszpan's defense team. Their strategy to save Grynszpan hinged on a bold and controversial move, decoupling the assassination from its political motivations and presenting it as a crime of passion. This unexpected shift enraged Grynszpan, who had regarded himself a hero for his actions against the Nazi regime's anti-Semitic policies. He remained firm in his belief that he was a Jewish avenger, fighting for the rights of his people. A twist in the tale emerged when allegations surfaced of a potential sexual relationship between Grynszpan and Rath, suggesting a personal motive for the assassination rather than a political one. According to this theory, Rath was homosexual and had met Grynszpan at a Paris bar where they began a sexual relationship, during which he promised to use his influence to legalize Grynszpan's French residency. Per this theory, when Rath reneged on his promise, Grynszpan went to the embassy and shot him. However, this theory is unlikely to be true. In the Sachsenhausen concentration camp in 1941, Grynszpan reportedly told fellow inmates that he intended to falsely claim at his trial that he had had a homosexual relationship with Rath. Some historians claim the theory was made up by Grynszpan's attorney. According to one historian, the theory originates from Grynszpan's attorney, Maitre Morogiaferi. By claiming that the act was born out of a homosexual affair and subsequent lovers' quarrel, Morogiaferi could reframe the crime from a politically charged assassination to a crime of passion, or crime passionnel, with the diplomat incidentally portrayed as the seducer of a minor. By adopting this strategy, they hoped to defuse the affair and reduce the penalty, possibly even prompting a suspended sentence. There is no definitive evidence whatsoever that Rath and Grynszpan had met prior to the shooting. As a matter of fact, German embassy officials claim that Grynszpan did not request Rath by name and only met with him because he happened to be on duty. From November 1938 to June 1940, Grynszpan was held in Frasnes prison, Paris, due to his involvement in the murder of Rath. The defense attempted to delay the trial, hoping to depoliticize the case as publicity decreased. The Germans, represented by lawyers and journalists like Wolfgang Diewerge and Friedrich Grimm, claimed Grynszpan was part of a Jewish conspiracy, but could not produce evidence to support this claim. They attempted to have him extradited to Germany, but French authorities refused. As the German army approached Paris in June 1940, prisoners including Grynszpan were evacuated, eventually resulting in his illegal extradition to Germany. Throughout the war, Grynszpan was held in German custody at various prisons and concentration camps, and Goebbels intended to use him in a show trial to accuse international Jewry of Rath's murder. There were legal disputes over whether Grynszpan, a non-German citizen, could be tried in Germany. Grynszpan was eventually charged with high treason, indictable and executable under German law. The trial, initially set for January 1942, was delayed due to the U.S. entering the war, Germany's setbacks on the Eastern Front, and concerns over Grynszpan's potential defense claim of a homosexual relationship with Rath. A trial eventually became unlikely as the Ministry of Justice was uncomfortable with the potential fallout of Grynszpan's defense claim. It wasn't that they believed the claim, but rather the exposure of Rath's brother's homosexuality and the implications it might bring. In contrast to Rath himself, where there is no evidence of his alleged homosexuality, Rath's brother Gustav was a confirmed homosexual who had been court-martialed for it. Morogiaferi had provided Grynszpan with details of his personal life, which he would reveal in court, embarrassing the Rath family. The case was not pursued after September 1942, and Grynszpan's fate after this point remains unknown. His trial was never formally cancelled, suggesting he may have been kept alive in case a trial became possible later. According to Adolf Eichmann at his 1961 trial, he may have still been alive in late 1943 or early 1944 at Gestapo headquarters in Berlin. Eichmann testified that he was ordered to examine Grynszpan in 1943 or 1944, but did not know his fate. Now let's discuss Grynszpan's fate and rumored survival. The mysterious fate of Herschel Grynszpan has captivated historians and the public for decades. After World War II, Grynszpan's lawyer, Serge Wielgudschow, claimed Grynszpan was executed in 1940, but conflicting reports also suggested he died just before the war's end. Over the years, various claims have been made by people insisting they knew of Grynszpan's whereabouts, that he had changed his name and started a family, that he ran a petrol station outside Paris, or that he worked in the import-export business. But there has never been any proof. A German journalist told a court at the start of the 1960s that Grynszpan was prepared to return to Germany and tell the truth of what had happened as long as he could be guaranteed immunity from prosecution. But prosecutors ruled out such a chance, as Grynszpan was a murder suspect and would have to be tried accordingly. Amidst this uncertainty, Michael von Soltikow, a former Nazi journalist, published articles claiming Grynszpan was alive and living in Paris. He proposed that the murder of diplomat Ernst von Rath was not an act of Jewish conspiracy, but the result of a failed homosexual relationship. This theory resonated with many post-war Germans, who preferred the narrative that a Jew could murder a German without punishment, supporting their argument for not prosecuting Germans for war crimes. Despite Soltikow's audacious claims, he was later sued for defamation by the Rath family, and Dutch historian Sidney Smeets referred to him as a con man whose claims were lies. French Dr. Alain Cunot conducted an extensive search for Grynszpan but found no evidence of his survival. His parents, Sendel and Rivka, survived the Holocaust and immigrated to Israel in 1948. The West German government declared Grynszpan dead in 1960 at the request of his parents, who hadn't heard from him since the war. His parents claimed that he had not been in contact with them in over 15 years, which was very very out of character for him and is a strong piece of evidence against theories about his post-World War II survival. Although it should be noted that a Guardian article claims that the announcement of his death by the West German government requested by his parents enabled them to draw a pension from the German state, suggesting that there may have been some conflict of interest and motive for not being entirely honest. And above all else, the historical consensus is that Grynszpan did not survive the war. With all of that out of the way, let's talk about the main topic of this video. In December 2016, a photograph in the archives of the Vienna Jewish Museum was discovered that baffled historians. Kristallnacht, the Vienna Jewish Museum's head archivist, and Armin Führer, gosh what an unfortunate last name, especially for a historian specializing in Nazi-era history, are convinced that this recently discovered photo taken in 1946 shows Grynszpan. The photograph, taken at a displaced persons camp in Bamberg, Bavaria on July 3, 1946, shows a man resembling Grynszpan participating in a demonstration by Holocaust survivors against British refusal to let them emigrate to the British Mandate of Palestine. A facial recognition test indicated a 95% possibility, the highest possible score, that the man in the photo was Grynszpan. If this man is indeed Grynszpan, it would solve one of the most enduring mysteries of Nazi Germany. Nevertheless, keep in mind that the Nazis typically did not permit prominent prisoners who had outlived their usefulness to escape unscathed, so if Grynszpan did survive, the most plausible explanation would be that he collaborated with the Nazis. It is difficult to conceive of any other way Grynszpan could have survived. If he did survive the war, he could be alive right this very second. He was born in 1921, which would make him 102 years old at the time of this video's posting. Although unlikely, there are enough 102-year-olds around for his being alive right now to be within the realm of plausibility. Who knows? At this very moment, he might be watching this video. At the very least, I hope the fact that Grynszpan could be alive today illustrates how one of the darkest chapters in human history was truly not that long ago. In a Guardian article on the topic, it is noted that Führer himself entertained the possibility of Grynszpan being alive right now. Führer has even toyed with the possibility that Grynszpan, who remains a controversial figure amongst Holocaust survivors, some of whom hold him responsible for stoking the Nazis' wrath, might still be alive. It's not out of the question. He would be 95. He could be living under an assumed name in Israel or the United States. Personally, I think it is more likely than not that Grynszpan died during World War II, but it is also very likely that he survived the war. In my opinion, most conspiracy theories are nonsense, but this seems to be one of the most plausible conspiracy theories out there. The post-World War II, 1946 photograph that scored a 95% chance of being Grynszpan in a facial recognition test is compelling evidence, but this in and of itself does not definitively prove anything. All of us have several doppelgangers out there, and especially considering that this photograph was taken at a displaced persons camp full of Jewish refugees from Grynszpan's general region, it seems quite likely, or at the very least somewhat likely, that this man is a mere Grynszpan doppelganger. However, I think it is very plausible that this assassination was an inside job, and that Grynszpan was secretly recruited by the Nazis to kill Rath in order to justify Kristallnacht, which would explain his possible survival after World War II. In fact, Prakash alluded to this possibility, stating,
"It was so unusual for someone of his prominence to have survived, as very few others did. The suspicion has to be that he collaborated with the Nazis in some way."
However, it cannot be overstated that there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that Grynszpan survived the war with the exception of one photograph. Sources for this video can be found in the description below. Until more definitive evidence emerges, the mystery of Herschel Grynszpan's fate remains, a living testament to the unfathomable depths of human suffering and resilience during the Holocaust. His story is a stark reminder of the capacity of an individual act to reverberate through history, influencing events far beyond its original intent. Grynszpan's story offers a haunting exploration of resistance, personal responsibility, and the desperate acts born out of injustice and persecution. It underscores the complex entanglement of human motivations and actions in the face of oppressive regimes and serves as a reminder of our duty to ensure that the atrocities of the past are never repeated. Do you think Grynszpan survived the war? Could he be alive right now? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more content like this.